I never thought flipping burgers at McDonald's would lead me into something that would keep me awake for years. It was the summer after my junior year of high school. I had just turned 17, stuck in that strange limbo between childhood and adulthood. Old enough to work, too young to understand what kind of darkness hides in ordinary places. My parents were the earn-your-own type. The moment school ended, my dad dropped the newspaper on the kitchen table and said, "Time to get a job, Dylan." So I did. I landed one at a McDonald's in Millstone, a tiny town tucked deep in Indiana, surrounded by endless cornfields and roads that went nowhere. A place so quiet at night you could hear the hum of a single streetlight. It wasn't my first job. I'd done weekends at a hardware store before, Paranormal, but this was different. McDonald's was chaos. The air was hot and greasy, the fryers hissed nonstop, the headset never came off, and people could go from polite to furious in seconds. But I adjusted. After a couple of weeks, I learned the rhythm. Clock in, toss the headset on, fry, serve, clean, repeat. Most of the crew were teenagers like me, a few college dropouts, and some older folks just trying to make ends meet. The night shift had its own energy. Tired jokes, stale coffee, the soft hum of the ice cream machine we all knew never worked. There was a weird sense of camaraderie, like we were all soldiers surviving a nightly fast food war. Then Aaron showed up. He was hired about 3 weeks after me. He was tall and lean, maybe 21, with jet black hair and pale skin like he hadn't seen sunlight in years. His eyes always looked tired, surrounded by dark circles that made him seem older than he probably was. His uniform, though, was always spotless. Too spotless, like he'd ironed it 5 minutes before coming in. He didn't talk much. When he did, it was in a quiet, careful tone, like every word had to be weighed before he said it. Most people ignored him, thinking he was just shy. I tried being friendly once or twice, got short, polite answers and a faint nod. But there was something about him I couldn't place, something that made me uneasy. The first time we spoke properly was because he dropped a full box of frozen patties. They scattered across the tile with a crash that made the manager snap her head up. "Shit," he muttered under his breath, crouching down to pick them up. I knelt to help. "Don't worry about it, happens to everyone." He looked at me then, those sunken eyes catching mine for just a second too long. "You're Dylan, right?" "Yeah." "You're Aaron?" "Yeah." That was it. That small exchange stuck with me more than it should have. Over the next few weeks, he kept to himself. He didn't joke around, didn't hang out in the break room, didn't join the crew's group chat. But I started noticing little things. He'd watch people, not constantly, but often enough that it became hard to ignore. You'd turn around mid-shift and see him looking at you, blankly, like he was studying something behind your eyes. And the moment you made eye contact, he'd look away and go back to whatever he was doing. Weird, but not threatening. At least not at first. Then came that Friday night. It was late summer, the air warm and heavy with humidity. I was finishing up a 3 to 9 shift. The place was slow, just a few drive-through orders and 1 or 2 people sitting inside. I clocked out, grabbed my backpack and walked out into the dim parking lot. That's when I heard someone call out behind me. "Hey, Dylan." I turned. It was Aaron, standing near the dumpsters. No uniform, no name tag, just jeans and a dark hoodie. "Didn't see you working today," I said, unlocking my car. "I wasn't," he replied, voice quiet, almost drowned out by the hum of the air conditioner units. "Just had to stop by." My ride bailed. "You mind giving me a lift?" He gave an address, said it was about 10 minutes away. I hesitated. I hadn't seen him inside at all. No clock in, no reason to be here, but he looked normal enough. Just tired, maybe desperate. "Sure," I said. "Hop in." The drive started quiet. The only sound was the dull rattle of my old Honda's air vents. I tried small talk. "You been working a lot lately?" He shrugged. "Not really. They've been cutting my hours." The way he said it, slow, deliberate, felt like there was something behind it. Like he blamed someone, though I didn't ask who. When we reached the address, I slowed down. It was a small house tucked behind a mechanic shop, half the windows boarded up. He didn't say a word, just got out, shut the door, and walked toward the dark house without looking back. I drove off, unsettled but brushed it off. People are weird, whatever. A week later, I had another closing shift. It ended around the same time. I said my goodbyes, grabbed my things, and stepped into the quiet night. That's when I noticed a black sedan parked near the far edge of the lot. Engine off, lights off. It hadn't been there earlier. Something in my gut twisted. I squinted through the windshield, and there he was. Aaron, just sitting there, staring. I tried to act normal, got into my car, and pulled out. When I reached the stop sign at the edge of the lot, his headlights flicked on. He pulled out right behind me. At first, I told myself it was coincidence. Maybe he was heading home. But every turn I took, he took too. Even when I passed the road that led to his house, I could feel my pulse hammering in my throat. Instead of driving home, I took a detour through a quiet neighborhood, circling blocks until I finally pulled into a random driveway. I turned off my lights and waited. Aaron's sedan slowed as it passed. His silhouette stayed still, then disappeared down the street. I sat there for nearly 5 minutes before heading home. When I finally made it to my driveway, I locked my car doors twice and checked behind me before going inside. That night, I barely slept. A few days later, I got a text. Aaron, you working tomorrow? Need a ride? Can't get there, otherwise I froze. I didn't even remember giving him my number. Then I realized someone from the crew chat must have shared it. Me. Not sure if I'm on the schedule. Might have plans. He didn't reply. When I mentioned it to my coworker the next day, her face went pale. You didn't hear? She said. Hear what? He got fired. 3 days ago. Showed up drunk, yelled at Rena. Cops came. He's banned from the property. My stomach dropped. I blocked his number that second, but from then on everything felt wrong. Every closing shift I parked closer to the entrance. Every noise outside made me flinch. Sometimes when I'd step outside at night, I swore I saw a car idling far down the street, lights off but engine running. It's been years since then. I quit McDonald's that fall, went off to college, tried to forget, but I never did. Because sometimes when I drive late at night, I still catch glimpses of a black sedan in my rearview mirror. Never too close, never too far, just enough to remind me of that night. And the man with the dark circles who once asked for a ride. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd said yes the second time. What he really wanted that night. And whether he's still out there, waiting for someone else to give him a lift. I've worked the late-night shift at McDonald's for almost 3 years now. Most nights are the same. Drunk college kids, truckers grabbing coffee, the occasional homeless guy trying to get warm. But there was one night, about 8 months ago, that changed how I look at every customer who walks through that door. It was a Wednesday. Quiet, just me, another guy on the grill, and our manager, Beth. Around 2:15 a.m., a man walked in. Nothing unusual at first glance. Average height, gray hoodie pulled over his head, hands stuffed in his pockets. He didn't approach the counter immediately. He just stood near the door, staring at the menu board. Take your time, I said, trying to sound friendly. He didn't respond. After about a full minute, he slowly stepped up. His face was shadowed by the hood, but I could make out pale skin and cracked lips. He ordered just one thing, a small black coffee. When I turned around to pour it, I noticed something strange in the reflection of the metal counter. He wasn't watching me. He was staring past me into the kitchen area like he was looking for someone. I handed him the cup and said, $1.49. He slid a wet, crumpled dollar bill and some coins across the counter. His hand trembled. Not like a junkie's twitch, but like someone who hadn't eaten or slept in days. He took the coffee and sat at the far corner booth, the one near the window that looks out at the drive-through exit. And then he just sat there, didn't drink, didn't move, just stared out the window. An hour passed. 2 customers came and went. He was still there, coffee untouched, hoodie up, body perfectly still. At around 3:05 a.m., Beth came out from the back and whispered, "That guy hasn't moved in an hour. Ask him to leave." I walked up, trying to sound calm. "Hey man, we're about to close the lobby. You okay?" No answer. When I got closer, I realized he was muttering something, very quietly. I leaned in a little. It sounded like he was saying the same phrase over and over again. "She didn't leave. She didn't leave. She didn't leave." I froze. "Sir?" He turned his head slowly, and that's when I finally saw his face. His eyes were bloodshot, skin grayish like he hadn't been outside in weeks. And his cheek, I swear there was a fresh scratch like a fingernail mark. Beth came over and said firmly, "Sir, you need to go. We're closing." He blinked, then smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. It was tight, forced, like he was holding something back. Then he said softly, "She used to sit right there." He pointed to the booth across from his. "Every night, waiting for me." Beth hesitated. "Sir, I'm sorry, but you really—" He stood up suddenly, knocking over the coffee cup. The liquid was ice cold. "She didn't leave," he hissed again. Then he walked out, calm at first, then faster, disappearing into the dark parking lot. We locked the doors immediately. About 15 minutes later, I went to take the trash out through the back door. It was cold and quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you aware of every sound. I was dragging the trash bag toward the dumpster when I noticed movement near the edge of the lot. It was him, standing just beyond the lights, staring right at me. He raised his hand, not waving, not threatening, just holding something up. A photo. Even from that distance, I could see it. A picture of a woman in a McDonald's uniform smiling. He slowly turned, walked toward the road, and vanished into the night. The next day, Beth called corporate. Turns out, about 2 years earlier, an employee named Sarah had been murdered behind the building after her late shift. Her boyfriend, a former employee, had disappeared before the cops could find him. When the police showed me the file photo, it was him, the man in the gray hoodie, except the photo was taken 2 years ago. I used to work the closing shift at a McDonald's just off Interstate 90 in a town called Fairview. It wasn't a bad job. The pay was trash, but the people were decent, and the manager, Mel, didn't breathe down your neck like most fast food bosses do. Still, closing shifts were always rough, mostly because we had to clean everything after midnight when the world felt half asleep and the store was half dead. The worst part of that store wasn't the grease trap or the drunk customers or even the sound of the ice machine echoing through the kitchen. It was the walk-in freezer. Everyone hated that thing. It was old, loud, and colder than it needed to be. The rubber seal on the door didn't always catch, so it groaned and popped at random times, like someone pushing on it from the inside. The newer employees always jumped the first time they heard it. The night everything changed. It happened on a Sunday night, mid-January. Snow was falling so hard it looked like static outside the drive-through window. There were only 3 of us closing that night. Me, Mel, and a kid named Jason who'd just turned 19. Business was dead, so we started cleaning early. Around 12:40 a.m., Mel sent Jason into the freezer to restock the fries and nuggets for the morning shift. He was gone for maybe 2 minutes before the freezer door slammed shut with that heavy metal thud. Then silence. I remember glancing at Mel. She frowned and said, "That thing better not be stuck again." We'd had trouble before. Once a latch had frozen shut and we had to pry it open with a crowbar. She walked over, grabbed the handle and tugged. It didn't budge. She yanked again, harder this time, still stuck. Then faintly from the other side we heard pounding. Jason's voice muffled through the door. "Hey, it won't open." Mel called back. "Hang on, I got it." She twisted, pulled, kicked the bottom corner. Nothing. Then something happened that made my stomach drop. The pounding stopped. "Jason?" she yelled. No answer. I walked up beside her, listening. I swear I could hear faint breathing, slow, shaky, like someone standing right on the other side of the door. Then, out of nowhere, a different voice whispered, deep, rasping, nothing like Jason's. "It's cold in here." Mel jumped back. "Jason, quit screwing around," she snapped. No reply. She called maintenance, but they were an hour away because of the snowstorm, so she told me to grab the metal bar we used to prop the mop sink door open. Together, we jammed it between the latch and the frame and forced the freezer open. When it finally gave way, a burst of white vapor poured out like smoke. The light flickered inside, that buzzing fluorescent glow that made everything look sterile and wrong. Jason was standing at the back, not moving, facing the wall. "Jason!" Mel yelled. He turned around slowly. His face was pale, lips almost blue, and his eyes looked wrong, like he wasn't really seeing us. He stumbled forward, breathing heavy, and whispered, "Someone's in there." Mel and I looked behind him. The freezer was empty. Just boxes of frozen patties and bags of fries. We got him out, wrapped him in a jacket, and called the paramedics because his body temp was dangerously low. While we waited, I went back to grab the door sensor data for the report. The system automatically logged every time the freezer door opened or closed. It showed something strange. The door had been opened 4 times between 12:40 and 12:46 a.m., but none of us had gone near it after Jason went in. When the paramedics left with him, Mel locked the freezer and closed early. She told me not to tell anyone what happened. Corporate didn't like ghost stories attached to their stores. Jason never came back to work. When I called him a week later, his mom answered. She said he was still having nightmares, waking up screaming about someone whispering his name in the dark. A month later, I was closing alone when I heard it again. That faint groaning of the freezer door moving. I turned around just in time to see it open a few inches on its own, the inside light flickering. I walked toward it, heart pounding, and I swear to God I heard it again. That same voice, low and slow. "It's cold in here." When Mel quit a few weeks later, I didn't blame her. And even now, years later, when I walk into any McDonald's and hear the hum of the freezer in the back, I still get chills like someone standing just behind the door waiting to get out. I'd been working at the McDonald's off Highway 42 for about 6 months when the night of the storm happened. It was early spring. Cold rain, heavy winds, thunder that made the metal roof rattle. We were supposed to close the lobby at midnight, but the drive-thru stayed open until 2 a.m. That night it was just 3 of us, me on headset, Carla on the grill, and Mr. Davis, the night manager, doing inventory in the office. Usually the drive-thru dies down after 1 a.m., but the weather made it worse. The rain hammered so hard on the windows it sounded like static, and the parking lot lights kept flickering from the wind. Around 1:10, a car pulled up. An old blue sedan, headlights dim, engine barely running. I clicked my headset. "Welcome to McDonald's. Go ahead whenever you're ready." No response. All I could hear was faint breathing, like someone leaning too close to a microphone. Then the voice, a low male voice, almost polite but strained. "Do you still have the fish sandwiches?" "Yeah, filet-o-fish. You want the meal or just the sandwich?" A pause. Then, 2. Just 2. She likes them, she? I thought. I punched it in, told him the total, not $7.64, and waited. The car didn't move. The rain was pouring so hard the camera feed at the first window was all blurry. Finally, the car crept forward. I opened the window and the smell hit first. Wet clothes, stale cigarettes, and something metallic like rust. The man's face was mostly hidden under a dripping hood. In the passenger seat, I could just barely make out a shape under a blanket. I tried not to stare. $7.64, I said, holding out my hand. He slowly reached into his pocket, fingers shaking, and dropped a handful of wet coins onto the counter. Then he whispered, "She's cold. Can I get some napkins?" "Sure." I handed him a few. He turned toward the passenger seat, tucked the napkins under the blanket, and then looked back at me with these pale, exhausted eyes. "She doesn't like the rain," he said softly. I nodded awkwardly and slid the window shut. The car rolled forward to the next window. Carla leaned over. What was that about? I shook my head. He's weird, but whatever. She went to drop the sandwiches in the bag, but then froze. Did you see the passenger? She asked quietly. Barely. Why? She swallowed. Because I think she wasn't moving. I tried to laugh it off. Probably asleep. But the way she said it made my stomach twist. When the order was ready, I went to the second window. The car was still there, engine idling, wipers scraping across the windshield. The man had his head tilted down, both hands gripping the wheel like he was praying. I opened the window. Here you go, sir. He didn't look up, just said, could you put it in the back seat? That was strange. I'm not supposed to leave the window, sir. He turned his head slowly toward me, and I saw his face clearly this time. Pale, rain-spotted, lips cracked. Please. She doesn't want me to move her right now. Every instinct told me to back away, but before I could say anything, Mr. Davis stepped up behind me. What's going on? He asked. I told him quietly. He looked through the glass for a long moment, then said, Sir, you'll need to pull forward. We'll bring it out. The man stared at us both, then nodded. The car rolled a few feet ahead and stopped under the overhang near the dumpster area. Davis sighed. Lock the window. He went out with an umbrella and the bag of food. Carla and I watched through the wet glass as he leaned into the driver's side window for maybe 30 seconds. Then he stepped back fast, ran to the door, and came in white-faced. Call 911, he said. What? Why? He didn't answer right away, just locked the doors and whispered, There's nobody else in that car. Carla blinked. What do you mean? We saw someone. He shook his head. No. The passenger seat's empty, but it's soaked, like someone's been sitting there in the rain for hours. Before we could react, the sedan's headlights flicked off. The engine kept running for another few seconds, then cut out. The three of us stood there, listening to the rain pound the roof. Then the car door opened. The man stepped out slowly, clutching the bag of food to his chest, walked to the passenger side, opened the door, and started talking softly. To no one. We could see his mouth moving, his hand gesturing like he was trying to comfort someone who wasn't there. When the police arrived 10 minutes later, the car was still parked. The man was gone. Just gone. No footprints leading away, nothing but the half-eaten sandwiches on the passenger seat and the sodden blanket. The officer who took our statement said something that still gives me chills. A car matching that description had been found 2 weeks earlier in a creek off the same highway. Inside were the bodies of a man and his wife. Both had drowned in the storm. Sometimes, when it rains hard enough at night, our drive-through headset picks up static. Faint breathing, a whisper, and a man's voice asking, Do you still have the fish sandwiches? And every time it happens, we shut the lane down early. When I tell people I used to work at McDonald's, they think of fries, Happy Meals, and late-night shifts filled with laughter and chaos. But I can't walk into one anymore. Not after what I saw on that closing shift 3 years ago. I worked at a small-town McDonald's just outside of Lansing, Michigan. The store was built in the early 2000s, but the building felt older. Something about the layout, the creaky tiles, and the way the fluorescent lights hummed when the sun went down. Most nights were uneventful. Clean, mop, close the registers, lock up, go home. But the dining room, that's where it always felt wrong. The air was colder there even when the AC was off. Sometimes we'd come in for the morning shift and find all the chairs slightly pulled out, like people had just left. At first, we joked about it, until the night of March 19th, the start of the shift. It was me, Kayla, assistant manager, and Jonah, new kid, maybe 17. We closed at midnight, so around 11:30 we started cleaning. A storm was rolling in outside, lightning flashing across the windows, thunder shaking the sign out front. The last customer left at 11:45, A guy with a hood pulled low who ordered a large coffee and sat alone near the back corner. He stared at his cup the entire time, didn't take a sip. When he finally left, the rain had turned into a full-on downpour. At midnight, I went to lock the doors. That's when I noticed the reflection. In the glass behind me, the dining area lights flickered. I turned around. Nothing. Just the empty booths, chairs stacked and napkins fluttering from the AC vent. I shrugged it off and finished locking up. The flickering lights around 12:20 while Kayla counted the drawer in the office and Jonah mopped the back kitchen. I heard something faint, like the sound of a straw wrapper crinkling. It came from the dining area. When I looked up, the lights above the soda machine were flickering again. That stuttering buzz fluorescent lights make when they're about to die. I muttered to myself, "Not again," and walked out to check. Half the lights were out now. The other half glowed dim yellow, making the room look smaller, claustrophobic. I reached for the light switch near the door and froze. All of the chairs were down, not stacked, not the way we left them 20 minutes ago. Every chair was pushed up neatly to its table, like someone had just opened for breakfast. I stared for a full minute, thinking maybe Jonah had done it to mess with me. But I hadn't heard a sound. Then from the corner booth, the one where the last customer sat, I heard a low creak, like leather shifting. The air turned cold enough that I could see my breath. The shadow in the glass. I backed up slowly toward the counter and called out, "Kayla? Jonah?" Kayla came out from the office, annoyed. "What? Were you in the dining area?" I asked. She frowned. "No. Why?" I just pointed. She looked past me and her expression changed. All the chairs were now facing the windows, every single one. We stood there in silence for a few seconds. Then the storm outside flashed again, and for a split second the glass reflected something. A figure sitting in the far booth, tall, slouched, head turned toward us. When the lightning faded, it was gone. Kayla whispered, "Did you see that?" Before I could answer, the soda machine hissed, a sharp, long hiss like someone pressing every button at once. Coke, Sprite, water, all spraying, mixing, spilling onto the floor. We both screamed. Jonah came running, slipping on the wet floor. "What the hell happened?" he yelled. Kayla grabbed the breaker switch to kill the power to the dining lights. Everything went dark except the dim glow of the kitchen lamps. But the machine kept hissing, even with the power off. The 3:03 incident we called maintenance, but nobody answered that late. So we decided to just stay together in the back until the storm passed. Around 3:03 a.m., the store lights flickered back on by themselves. Jonah gasped. Kayla grabbed her phone flashlight and whispered, "Stay here." I didn't want her to go alone, so I followed. When we stepped back into the dining area, everything looked normal again. Chairs stacked, floors clean. But on the counter next to the soda machine, someone had left a cup. It wasn't one of ours, it was older, faded. The kind with the 1990s McDonald's logo on it. Half filled with black coffee, and steam was still rising from it. Kayla picked it up slowly, and when she did, something slipped out from under it. A receipt. Printed on it, clear as day, was the date. March 19th, 2001, 12:47 a.m. Exactly 24 years earlier. The order? One large coffee. Kayla dropped the cup and ran to the office to call the police. Jonah and I followed, but before we could reach the door, every light in the dining area blazed back on, all at once, and for the briefest moment we saw him. That same man from earlier, sitting in the corner booth staring at us with hollow gray eyes. Then the lights snapped off again. The cops came 20 minutes later. They didn't find anyone. The doors were locked from the inside, and all the cameras glitched out between 12:40 and 3:05 a.m. The next day, corporate sent electricians, new wiring, and a fresh set of bulbs. They said it was just a storm surge. But sometimes, even now, when I drive past that store at night, I see a faint light in the dining room. One booth illuminated. A man sitting alone, staring at a cup of coffee that never cools down. I worked at McDonald's for almost 7 years. Started when I was 18, fresh out of high school, and by the time I was 25, I'd seen everything. Fights, robberies, weird customers, even a small fire in the fryer pit. But nothing compares to what happened on my final week there. This isn't a ghost story. At least I don't think it is. But it still plays in my head like a looping security tape, flickering, skipping, rewinding, and every time I remember that night I feel like I missed something important, something human. The setup. It was a Thursday, late November, the kind of night where the cold wind cuts straight through your uniform. I was the night manager at the 24-hour McDonald's on Route 71 in Bloomington, Illinois. Our overnight crew was small. Me, a cook named Luis, a drive-through girl named Marcy, and a janitor named Ed. The shift started normal. The dining room was closed, drive-through only. Around 11 p.m., a group of teenagers came by, blasting music, laughing, ordering 10 McChickens, then forgetting to pay. Typical night stuff. But around 1:30 a.m., things got quiet. Too quiet. Usually you'd hear the hum of the soda machine or the distant static of the radio. But that night it felt hollow, like the building itself was holding its breath. I was doing my usual office paperwork when I noticed one of the security feeds glitching. Camera 4, dining area. Normally it showed a dark, empty room with chairs stacked on tables and the glow of the parking lot lights outside. But now, there was movement. It was faint, almost like the reflection of someone walking past. I leaned closer. The timestamp blinked, froze for a second, then skipped ahead 12 seconds. I rewound it. Frame by frame, there, near the soda machine, a shape. It wasn't clear, but it looked like a person standing in the dark. Too tall to be Marcy, too thin to be Ed. At first I thought maybe a reflection from a car outside, but the dining room doors were locked. No lights were moving outside. "Luis," I called over the headset. "You near the front?" "No, boss," he said, voice crackling. "I'm in the back freezer." I checked the monitor again. The figure was closer now, halfway between the counter and the tables. Still, silent. My stomach tightened. I switched to the front entrance camera. Nothing. Then the headset cut off. Static. The shadow. I went to the kitchen. "Hey, Marcy," I said. She poked her head out from the drive-through window, chewing gum. "What's up? You see anyone walk by the dining area?" She frowned. "No. Why?" I didn't answer. I just walked out front, keys jingling in my hand. The dining area was dark except for the dim light coming from the soda machine. The chairs were still stacked, but one was slightly pulled out. I approached slowly, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe Ed forgot to push it in after mopping. Then I heard it. The click, the sound of the front door unlocking. I froze. It was subtle, like someone had just turned a key and eased it open, but the door's lock was electric, controlled from the counter. You couldn't just twist it. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. Just that sound of soft, rubbery footsteps on tile. I backed away toward the office, heart pounding. The recording. By the time I reached the office, the monitors were all static except one. Camera 4 again. The dining area. There was someone standing in front of the counter, head tilted, wearing what looked like a dark McDonald's uniform. But it wasn't any of ours. The shirt was older, the kind with the yellow arch stitched over red text. The style they stopped using years ago. The figure leaned forward, palms flat on the counter, and for the first time I could make out the face, or part of it. White skin, sunken eyes, lips moving like he was mouthing something. I turned on the mic connected to the lobby speaker. "Whoever you are, you need to leave now." No reaction, just a faint smile. Then he lifted his hand and waved, slow, deliberate, before turning toward the back door leading to the kitchen. I didn't even think. I ran. The back door. When I got to the kitchen, Luis was standing near the fryers, staring at the door that led to the rear alley. "Did you see someone come through here?" I asked, breathless. He shook his head. "No, man. But I heard it." Someone knocked? Yeah, he whispered. 3 times, then stopped. We both turned to look. The door's glass was fogged from the cold. A faint shape appeared behind it, tall, unmoving. Luis backed away, eyes wide. "Boss, let's just go," he muttered. Before I could answer, the shape vanished. I yanked the door open, expecting to see someone in the alley. Nothing. Just rain hitting asphalt and the hum of the dumpster light. I locked it again and went back to the office. The next morning, when daylight came, I called corporate and reported possible break-in activity. They sent a security technician to review the footage. He spent about 2 hours watching, scrubbing through timestamps. Then he called me over. You sure you saw something?" he asked. "Yeah, a guy, in an old uniform." He turned the monitor to face me. The recording showed me, walking into the dining room, standing near the counter, staring at empty air. No figure, no wave, no movement at all. The timestamp skipped again, the same 12-second gap. Then he said something that chilled me. "Your system shows someone logged in under another employee code that night." "Whose code?" I asked. He pointed at the screen. "Employee ID 0129, Derek S." I felt sick. Derek was a night manager who'd worked there before me. He'd been killed in a car crash on Route 71 5 years earlier, driving home after a shift. And get this, the time of death on the police report? 1:32 a.m., the exact minute the cameras glitched. Aftermath, I quit 3 days later. They offered me a transfer, even a raise. I didn't care. The store's still there. Sometimes when I drive past late at night, I see the dining room lights flicker, just once, like someone turned them on for a second and changed their mind. Luis told me later that a few months after I left, another manager swore she saw a man on the cameras too. Same uniform, same wave. Corporate eventually replaced the whole camera system. But that old employee ID, 0129, it still shows up in the logs sometimes, right around 1:30 a.m. I used to work the closing shift at a McDonald's off Highway 32 in rural Ohio. It wasn't a big store, one dining area, one drive-through, and one of those old play place structures with slides, tunnels, and a ball pit we stopped using years ago. When I first started, I thought the play place was cool, a relic from the 2000s, bright red tubes, blue slides, faded plastic faces of Ronald and Grimace painted on the walls. But by the time I'd been there 6 months, the whole thing just felt wrong. Not haunted exactly, just off. Why we closed it. We stopped letting kids in there after a maintenance guy named Tim found something strange. He was supposed to deep clean the tunnels after a pipe leak. When he opened one of the side hatches, he said it smelled like wet dirt and rot. He found animal bones, not rats, something bigger. And in the ball pit, he found half a shoe. The store manager shut the area down after that, put up renovation in progress signs. But that was just to avoid scaring parents. In reality, corporate didn't want to pay for removal, so they just kept the lights off and locked the gate. But every night when we'd mop the lobby, you could still hear the plastic creak and shift, like something moving inside. The routine, I worked nights with 2 people. Amanda, the drive-through lead, 23, sarcastic but sweet. Jordan, the grill guy, 19, quiet, chain-smoked on break. Our store closed at midnight, but we stayed till around 2 a.m. to clean. We always made jokes about the play place. Sometimes when things got slow, Amanda would dare Jordan to walk up to the glass and knock. He never did. There was something about that place. The way the dark seemed thicker inside. Even with all the lights on in the restaurant, that corner felt like it swallowed everything. The first night, one night around 1:15 a.m., I was mopping near the front counter when I heard something. Thump, thump, scrape. It came from the play place. I froze, mop dripping onto the floor. At first I thought maybe it was the wind, and sometimes the vents rattled. But this sounded heavier, like someone crawling through the tubes. I walked closer. The play place glass was filthy. Dust, fingerprints, and that weird greasy film that never went away. I wiped a patch clear with my sleeve. Inside, the tunnel entrance was dark. Too dark. Even though the hallway lights reflected off the glass, it felt like the darkness inside the slide just ate the light whole. Then, creak. One of the hanging plastic rings moved just a little. I stepped back. "Jordan," I called. He looked up from wiping the grill. "What? You go in there earlier?" He frowned. "Hell no." "You crazy?" Amanda chimed in. "Why, you hear something again?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "It's moving." They both laughed. "Probably a raccoon," Amanda said. I wanted to believe that. The second night, next night, same sound. Around 1 a.m., thump, scrape whistle. This time, Amanda heard it too. She turned off the music and we both stared at the playplace glass. Then something knocked back. 3 slow knocks on the inside of the tunnel wall. We both screamed and ran to the kitchen. Jordan laughed until he saw our faces. We called our manager the next morning, told her we thought someone might be sleeping inside. Maybe a homeless person who got in through the roof vent. She sighed. "We'll check it tomorrow." They never did. The camera. After that, I convinced Jordan to aim one of the security cameras toward the playplace. The feed was grainy, black and white, but it was enough to see the tunnel entrance and ball pit. We watched it on the office monitor during cleanup. At first, nothing, just dust floating through the static. Then around 1:38 a.m., the motion sensor blinked red. A shape crawled past the edge of the frame, fast, low to the ground. Jordan jumped. "What the hell was that?" I replayed it. The figure was small, maybe child-sized, but the proportions were wrong. The arms were too long, and it didn't walk. It moved like it was pulling itself forward with its elbows. We called the cops. They came, looked inside, shined their flashlights through the plastic tunnels, and told us they found nothing. But the officer said something weird before he left. He looked at the camera feed and said, "You know, this place used to have a missing persons report years back. A kid ran off during a birthday party, never found him." Then he shrugged. "Probably a glitch on your camera." The final night. A week later, Jordan quit, said he was done. Amanda started refusing to mop near the playplace. That left me. It was a Friday night, quiet. I was counting the register in the office when I heard the loudest bang I'd ever heard. It came from inside the playplace. The whole wall shook. I ran out front, my hands shaking, and saw the playplace door wide open. The padlock hung loose, broken. Inside, something was moving. I could hear plastic grinding, a low breathing sound, like someone trying to speak through the tunnels. Then a hand, pale, bony, filthy, slid out of the ball pit. Just the hand. It twitched, scraping against the tile, fingernails long and yellow. I couldn't move. Then another hand came out, grabbing the first, pulling it back inside, hard. And then silence. I called 911, locked the front doors, and waited outside until police came. They searched everything. The tunnels, the crawl space, the roof. They found nothing, no footprints, no forced entry, but when they pulled up the floor mats near the playplace, they found a hole under the ball pit. About 2 feet wide. Dug into the ground, dirt, insulation, plastic. It led nowhere. Just ended abruptly, like whoever dug it stopped halfway through. The next morning, corporate sealed the playplace with metal sheets. No one ever went back there. Now that McDonald's is gone now, replaced by a car wash. But every now and then, people online post old photos from when the playplace was still open. In one of them, there's a birthday group. Kids smiling, cake on the table, balloons everywhere. And in the background, behind the cloudy plastic tunnel window, you can see a pale face pressed against the inside of the slide, grinning.